Good evening, Burbies. Welcome to a very special Alliance on the Move program. I'm Kathy Hughes, and I have to say, I have a distinct pleasure this evening to have with me two gentlemen that I have the utmost respect, and in one case, a gentleman that I know very well. I want to welcome Dr. Shamir Ali and of course, Nigel Hughes. And Nigel Hughes is the one that I said I think I know pretty well. So, gentlemen, I'm looking forward to this unique opportunity. Never before have I interviewed both of you at the same time. Thank you for joining us. Doc?
Honorable Kathy, it's my distinct honor and privilege. Inside is trembling with joys and delight. I can see your dad, Kathy, your
Ah,
mom and dad, the great Chomley, the educationist, who knows. And as for Nigel, Nigel Sr., when Nigel Jr. was the runabout guy, Sr. was the disciplinarian. Who knows. So it's my honor and delight to be able to share some thoughts with you for a Guyana for all that the Hughes and the Chomleys gave their lives before Guyana became an independent nation in 66. They made sterling sacrifices, fought the British in so many ways, with the Speaker, R.B. Gajrad, Sir Donald Jackson, the Laco, you can go on. Who knows, no. But these days we have, with respect, many Johnny come lately in position power who choose not to look at the history, at least to look over and to learn and build on what is done rather than just destroy in this political, craziness. But Almighty is great.
absolutely. Thank you, Doc. And Nigel, you want to say any words of welcome to our viewers?
First of all, I'd like to take the opportunity on this eve of our Republic anniversary. We are 55 years as a republic to wish all Guyanese citizens a very happy republic. And at the same time, I want to wish them a very happy Mashramani. I can't begin to explain to you. I hope I can do justice to during the course of the program how honored I am to share the platform with Professor Ali. He has done yeoman work for Guyana, and you will see as we go through the program the breadth and depth of his contribution and his continued value to our country. So I want to say to him tonight publicly, sir, I deeply appreciate all your efforts and I hold you in the highest possible regard.
Honorable Nigel, thank you. I have great mentors and I'm living their lives with Almighty's graces. It is not about me. I have learned so much. I'm riding on their
Absolutely.
shoulders. So,
Wonderful, wonderful. So I want to say to our viewers, I don't think I need to introduce Dr. Shamir Ali. He has been part of the program and a very instrumental part of the Alliance for Change. But I want to remind you of the depth of his experience in the diplomatic front, not only in Guyana in the very early days, but also, of course, as a former ambassador to Kuwait with responsibility for several of the countries in that region. And why I mention this is because I want us to start by going back a couple of years since we are celebrating our republic. So, Dr. Shamir, you and I've had the great fortune of having you remind me of what it was like when we were becoming an independent nation. And you were there when that flag was coming down and the Guyana flag was going up. Can you share us some thoughts on the time when we became a republic? What was the spirit? Why did we become a republic? And what was the spirit in the country at that time?
well, thanks to the British last Governor General, Sir David Lute, in my opinion, he set the tone. Normally, when you have this transition from the colonial master into a territory, there's always risks and tension. But with Sir Richard Late, there was no such. There were differences of opinion, There were shades, there were tension, but there was delight, there was joy. There was unknown because we only had the African brothers and sisters as our guide. And with all the tensions Guyana has had, right and left and back and front, the tension was there, but the energy, the excitement, and the hope that Guyana will finally realize its dream. Don't remember, at the same time, Singapore, little island with nothing, got its independence months ago. So they were a little bit talking backward. Who will be the king in the end in 100 years? I can remember R.B. Gadraj and Lionel Laku had a conversation, and R.B. said he will bank in Singapore, and Sir Lionel says no, he will bank in Guyana because Guyana got gold and diamond and Singapore had none. And at that time, Lionel was correct. But with the evolution of time, thanks to Lee Kuan Yew Sr., a disciplinarian, some call him all manner of names, a disciplinarian, Singapore, the whole world knows. I just returned from a fantastic week in Singapore. They are in the stars with no end in sight. Right now, there's capital flight from nations, and Singapore is the number one. Dubai, number two. And that's what's happening. So their excitement is there, and hopefully that excitement can still come back. There was not this racial animosity. Both parties, the opposition, everybody was there. They had groups, they were there, they talked, interface. But like everything else in most nations, you fight on political principles and policies. But democracy is you're one family. You eat together, you drink together, you socialize together. That happens in the United States, in the Senate and House. People do not know. They do not fight all the time. They fight on their principle and the ideas. And those were there then, and I don't see that now in Parliament. When Sir Donald Jackson was Speaker, what is happening now will never happen in his watch. Never near it. Sir Raman Bacchus Gajraj, no way, Jose. You can't. No way. They know better. They were trained better. But all I can say with respect, Johnny come lately, they have no interest in looking at the past to make the future better. It's my way, position, power. But I will fade with the fluctuation of time. Common sense. Position, power goes. Is your personal power is the one that will be sustained. And hopefully it will come back in time. With the engineers bill, there is a flicker of hope.
Yes.
The engineers bill gave me a flicker of hope as we embark on this 55th anniversary, that the government listened, right or wrong, and hopefully they'll follow now with the Venezuela and Foreign Relations Committee at the MP. So there's hope.
Nice. Yes. And we're going to talk about all of that. Now, Nigel, you come from a generation that really has received a lot of the benefits of those early days. So can I ask you to share some of your thoughts on how has being a republic been of importance to you and, of course, to young people in Guyana? How did we benefit from it?
Well, Kathy, as you know, both of us were born in what would have been British Guyana because we only gained our independence in 1966. At the time we gained our independence, there was a Governor General, Sir David Rose, who was the Governor General. And from the 50s, you've got to remember India and Kenya were the first of the British Commonwealth to start to get their independence. And there was in Kenya, there was an awful battle, really bad, and in Nigeria as well, for independence. So we got ours in 66, and it was delayed essentially because of political differences in Guyana. Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica, I think, got theirs in 62. And Guyana, as one of the larger Caribbean Commonwealth countries, ought to have got it in 62. But we had a really awful time between 62 and 64. We had a mini civil war. And I think that began to cause reservations. So we got it in 66. Unfortunately, the Governor General died in an accident in London somewhere around 68, 69. And that presented the perfect opportunity for Guyana to become a republic. And for the young people that are unaware, in some countries, the Queen was the head of state. She was a titular head of state, and her representative in the country was the Governor General. So even though the Prime Minister would have been Prime Minister Burnham, would have been the Prime Minister, the head of state was the Queen, represented by the Governor General. And in some countries, you still have those vestiges of the colonial era. Well, the death of David Rose and the fact that the political movements in Guyana were always left of center, the major political movements in Guyana were left of center, and they wanted to cut as many ties as they had with the colonial masters. And when that opportunity presented itself in 1968, Guyana became a republic in 1970. I was a little boy. I could have been more than 6, 7 years old at the time, but I certainly remember when we became a republic. One of the things that also happened around that time was that we severed the right of appeal to the Privy Council. And a lot of people feared, genuinely feared that we would suffer, or judiciary would suffer, if we stopped going to the Privy Council. And I dare say, some of the best jurists in Guyana's history, who are also world-class, came out of Guyana between our independence and the late 70s. You had people like Joe F. Haynes, you had people like Luku, people like Crane, Stobie, George, absolutely.
Hughes, don't forget Daddy, your daddy, senior.
But you had world-class jurists in Guyana, and we became independent, and the fear that a lot of people had dissipated because we got some of the best judgments. Some of the judgments we got out of the court, and some of the arguments we got from counsel back in the day were actually ahead of those that came out of either the House of Lords and the Privy Council. So it was a very, very heady time. And because the world in those days was split between the East and the West, a lot of young people don't know that. The world was literally split. You either had to be in the Western Hemisphere or you had to be in the Eastern Hemisphere. And those people those leaders that we had that were progressive, wanted to break away from this dominance, and they established the non-aligned movement.
Yes.
So if you think, and this is something that I believe we don't give enough credence to, and this is both to Chetty and Burnham. Both of them were first generation leaders dealing with power. It was the first time the citizens of Guyana had power. So they had no elders to go to. They had no people they could fall back upon. And a lot of what people consider perhaps errors of judgment that they made were born out of that era in which they were crafting a new course. And they were crafting a course that was left of center when we were sitting in the American backyard, the Monroe Doctrine. And it took a lot of skill to be able to survive as a nation. We paid the price economically, but you will perhaps remember, I think it was when the South African Army, as you remember, and I'm just going to talk about this, had moved outside of South Africa, and it had its troops in the entire southern part of Africa. So it was in Namibia, it was in Angola, it was in Zimbabwe. And what happened was, the people of the third world felt very strongly about apartheid. And it was Fidel Castro who made the ultimate sacrifice by sending his troops and equipment to South Africa to fight. They
Via
went to
Atkinson
Angola.
Field. Via Atkinson Field.
Yeah.
Via Atkinson PTIA.
Burnham, they couldn't fly directly from Cuba to South Africa. And because of the pressure in the Western Hemisphere, no country wanted to give them permission to refuel or land and refuel. And it was Burnham who took that decision to say, no, apartheid on principle, we must fight. And the Cuban aircraft were allowed to land in Guyana. And the outcome of that story is, there's a very famous battle, I think it's the battle, and forgive my pronunciation, the Battle of Carabajo, in which the Cuban soldiers defeated the South African soldiers, and it was in, I think it was in Angola. And as a result of that defeat, and the fact that so many, I can't remember the number, several white South African soldiers died, South Africa took the position to call all its troops back out of Southern Africa into South Africa And that led to all those countries in the southern Africa, Angola, Mozambique. It was Mozambique where the battle took place, or not Angola, in Mozambique, Zimbabwe, to actually increase the fight. Zimbabwe, which was Rhodesia in those days, got their independence. You remember Bob Marley went up,
Yep.
Walter Rodney went up
Yeah.
for the independence celebration. And if you think of how advanced it was for us to be a republic and not, not have the Queen as the Governor General, like several of our other Caribbean states did, it was such a groundbreaking mark of independence. That look, this was a strike. As you know, it must have been 2-3 decades afterwards, Barbados became independent. Trinidad followed Guyana. And we were really at the forefront. We were strident. We were in the Northern Line movement, and we believed in the fact of the independence of our ability to think and the independence of our actions.
Excellent. Excellent.
All that thanks to His Excellency Lyndon Sampson Burnham. His
Yeah.
102nd birthday was last Thursday. And there's a long article in the Village Voice News based on my personal experiences. I have received over 300 positive remarks.
Wow.
Said I was
Okay.
balanced. I was fair. I didn't take sides, positive and negatives. 2 negatives from 2 Guyanese, one in Brooklyn and one in Richmond Hill, Queens. They're bitter. And I says, your experiences are not mine.
Yeah.
Share your experiences. I can only share mine to the best of my ability.
Well, that's a good entree, Dr. Shamir, because one of the things that we wanted to share is, of course, your in-depth knowledge and experience of the U.S. Governmental structures, the situations that are taking place now. I recall, and a lot of people will not know this, that you were advisor to former President Dole, and that's
Yes.
going back quite a few years.
Yes.
But Doc, we have had a change in the U.S. administration, and this has really changed the geopolitics in the entire world.
yes.
And so I want us to fast forward to where we are right now. What we are seeing with the new U.S. administration here in Guyana is that, of course, a lot of our USAID funded projects are now on hold. And there's a lot of uncertainty throughout the world. Can you share with us the impact of some of these things that are taking place on Guyana as a country? And, share with us your thoughts on that.
Certainly. For my brothers and sisters in Guyana who will not know, I'll have to share with you the evidence so you can understand why, how, and where. We are in 2025. In March 1994, that's 29 years ago, in March, Shemirali received from, I just lost you.
We're
No, we
still
still
seeing
see
you.
though.
I can't see you. I just lost.
Oh,
No, we're
okay.
here.
But we're hearing you and we're
Yeah.
seeing you.
Okay, I can't see anything. Wow.
Oh, there. You want to
It's
take a
sudden.
minute and see if you find it?
Yep, I'm
yeah.
trying to.
You take a minute and we'll come back to you. And I'll ask Nigel in the meantime. But Doc, we are seeing you and hearing you. So maybe you're just not seeing us on there. You want to just continue talking, or shall I ask Nigel?
I'm not sure he's
I
hearing
think
us.
I got it. Yes.
You got it?
Oops.
Oh, he's probably going to dial back in. But,
Yeah.
well, Nigel, let me ask you in the meantime, what are the things that Guyana needs to be doing? Because the reality is that I think the halting of the U.S. aid projects, and we can say that this is happening all over the world,
Yes.
is
Am I in?
part. Here's
Yeah.
Doc.
Okay. All right. The reason is in 1994. This is the Medal of Freedom from the Republican Senatorial Inner Circle.
Oh, wow.
There's a letter that goes with it, and I'll just read a little bit. March 94, press release, Dr. Shamir Ali, born in Guyana, now a U.S. citizen and president of International Consulting and Financial Services, will receive the Republican Senatorial Medal of Freedom at the
Wow.
1994 Republican Midterm Convention on May the 11th. The Republican Medal is the highest honor Republican members of the Senate can bestow. President Reagan, on receiving his medal, said, "The greatest victories come when people dare to be great, when they summon their spirits to brave the unknown and go forward to reach a greater good." Prime Minister Margaret Lady Thatcher received her medal on September 29, 1993, and Charlton Heston received his medal in July 1993. 1994, your humble servant from Guyana, Shamir Ali, received his medal.
Lovely, lovely,
As a
lovely.
result of
But
that, for all those years, I have inside information that they share with me, they ask me, they share, and I have inside information.
so,
Right now,
Doc, should Guyana be worried
yes,
about some of the policies?
yes,
I
it's
know we
no
have a
if.
lot to talk
With
about.
all due respect,
Yeah.
President Trump, 47, is very serious about Doge. For that matter, today, I'm not happy with some things they're doing, so I stayed silent.
Mhm.
And today they sent me an urgent email reminder they're missing my comments on Doge and all the cuts they're doing and all the firings. Before midnight, I will have to respond because they're serious. Yes, Guyana will be affected. And the reason is United States, the Trump administration is either my way or the highway. No if, arms, or buts. Look what happened to Ukraine. Ukraine got beat up a couple of days, left, right, and center. Next day, Ukraine agreed to allow 50% of the minerals. President Trump, number 47, is a deal maker. That's his style. With all due respect, he got the votes, and that's his style. Guyana and all the members of United Nations have been asked to assist in many ways. And there are two lists, those who will help and those who will not help. For Guyana, in August 2020, when the PPP came to power, it was with the help of 45. And as a result of it, the PPP leaders know there are 6 Guyanese trained, 2 from AFC, 2 from PPP, and 2 from PNC. And one of the PPP is Mohammed Irfan Ali. So they know the tricks of the trade and all the rules. They will be asked not only to take the bad Guyanese who are convicted, but other nations, irrespective of all the president says, he has no idea what's coming out. He is getting the surface. But bottom line is, Guyana, if it wants to maintain, not make the mistakes that President Granger made, and he made 3 that I know when I was in Kuwait, oh yes, that they will have to find an accommodation. What I do not know, all the details are being worked out, but yes, Guyana will have not only its own, others. If not, we will be in a sticky wicket. And with elections coming, the PPP will be smart to know they will do it quietly, and it might not be known on a need-to-know basis, very quietly in the shadow of the night. Watch that. That's how it's going to happen.
Gosh.
Yes, it's going to happen.
Challenging times ahead, and we know it's happening all over the world. Nigel,
Could I-
we were asking you
Sorry.
briefly. Sorry, let me
I
ask the
didn't,
question. We were-
I didn't want to assume your role, but I did want to inquire from Professor Shamir. Given the new dispensation of the administration in the United States of America, and given, like you said, it's going to be particularly transactional, and also the fact that several programs that impact Guyana and other countries have been stopped or terminated. What would your advice be in terms of engaging the U.S. or if you had to advise the foreign minister or the parliamentary subcommittee on foreign affairs, what would your advice be? And I'm so sorry, Kathy. It's just that I didn't want to lose this opportunity immediately after Professor
I'll give
Shamir.
two answers. One, continue to send your package, your documentation to the ambassador. Keep a link directly with her, show and tell and plead. I happen to know because of Guyana's oil riches, Guyana is no longer listed in a poor country. Guyana is listed in a rich country. And the team in thinking that is Guyana, Trinidad, and Jamaica needs to step up for the CARICOM. I am battling that, and I don't have the facts because I'm not in government, but that is the thinking of some people. Let the rich one among them take care of themselves. And you can imagine the rest if that is some of the thinking. How far that will go, only Almighty knows. But you know, Guyana is now rich in millions, billions. Trinidad is rich and Jamaica, so they're expecting CARICOM to stay helped by themselves. That is an option. It's on the table. I've heard it. I tried to plead and holler says you need a 10 years, give them a break. They're just struggling. They says, well, let them spend what they have. And you see, don't forget that the U.S. don't have the resources. The U.S. is borrowing money at interest rate. Our debt is in the stars. You know, be honest with you. If China, Japan, and the Middle East call in their debt tomorrow, America's bankrupt. That is the bottom line on the American side. So America cannot continue to give all these assistances and all fighting all these wars. In the government balance sheet, they're not like a business where you have assets and balance sheet and liabilities. The assets of America is in their buildings, their parks. That's not quantifiable. So that has a value, it's estimated value. But America is on a sticky wicket with a debt, and it has to be controlled. America is borrowing. All the aid that is being given is borrowed money. America has no surplus, it's zero surplus. That's the
Wow.
other side of the coin. That's
Yeah.
a hard fact. So how am I going to give you? I have to borrow to give you, and then I have the American pay packets. That's part of the revolution in the last election. America is waking up, and they says no more, and that is it. And in the USA, the next 2 years election midterm will tell whether it will go. President Trump's rating has been falling because with the firing, some people, his own supporters, are very upset, and he has dropped to 47 and is dropping. So hopefully that will temper enthusiasm with restraint. But all due respect, Guyana is in a very, very sticky wicket, irrespective of what the leaders will say. It is coming down slowly, quietly, just as what happened to Ukraine. Watch, it's going to happen to everyone who tried to resist.
Oh, wow. So, Nigel, I was asking you, what do you feel? What does Guyana learn from this position it finds itself in, like so many other countries? Does this force us to recognize we need to be more independent? And here I'm thinking in terms of, development projects that are now on hold and other impacts. What would you like to share in that area?
Well, I think the new administration in Washington has changed the game completely. This is a reset. So a lot of the presumptions and assumptions that we made in the past about U.S. foreign policy, we have to revisit them. Of course, there's one standing truth that will always remain, and that's the truth that Henry Kissinger articulated, that America has no permanent friends. They only have permanent interests. And that has been the cornerstone of America's foreign policy. That has not changed under the new administration. All that I think has happened is that the new administration has probably become a lot more direct in the implementation of that. So the new administration is saying, look, a lot of this money we're spending on U.S. aid, et cetera, like Professor Shamir said, we're going to cut it out because the philosophy of the present administration is that, that's excessive and we can't afford it. It's not for us in Guyana and the Caribbean to lament and complain and plead and borrow and say, change your policy. This is American foreign policy, and it will be America's economic and foreign policy for the next 4 years, as stated. What we have to do is, with the intellectual capacity that we have in the Caribbean, we have to come up with an approach which benefits the Caribbean as a whole, and two, positions Guyana, not just Guyana, positions the Caribbean, CARICOM, the region, in a favorable position given the current administration. And I'm happy that Professor Shamir mentioned the fact that the American administration, the current administration, is saying, look, Guyana, Trinidad, and Jamaica, you guys have substantive economies. In Guyana's case, your GDP is off the charts. You're growing at 30 whatever percent. How on earth are you asking us to continue foreign aid to you? We could attempt to articulate that this is not so, and attempt to delay the implementation of any policy that is the consequence of that. But we should be ahead of that curve, and we should be saying, look, it is a fact that you have three advanced economies relatively, and the number side. I don't think Guyana is a really advanced economy. We don't have an industrial base like Trinidad. We don't have the same base as Jamaica. We don't have the same level of tourism. So those two markets are more sophisticated, but on paper, Guyana is up there. So I think certainly Guyana should take the lead and say, look to Jamaica, Barbados, and Trinidad. Okay, so we've got some resources here. We know that the smaller states, the OECS says, the St. Vincent states, those are going to become exceedingly vulnerable to countries that are going to try and give them money and buy political support.
Venezuela.
So, Venezuela, I was just going to come to that example. So Venezuela is the classic. They get Bird Island, they get whatever. Guyana now should step up and engage those countries in the OECS, engage all those smaller economies in the region, and articulate a plan that will give them a level of economic security and development. And as part of that package, we want to be able to have their support, not only in terms of our border, but their support in terms of an economic integration plan for the Caribbean, which will be driven by these three economies. Jamaica, for a long time, as you know, Kathy, you lived there, their position was they tended to be more northern looking than the rest of the Caribbean. But now we have to talk about how we are going to allocate our collective resources in the Caribbean. So where our financial center is going to be? Is it going to be Trinidad or Jamaica? Where is our food security location going to be? Obviously, it's probably going to be in Guyana. That's an easy one. But it's not just talking food security. It's putting in place the programs to make sure that we actually have it. So in terms of foreign policy and reacting to the current administration in America, CARICOM is going to become very important because we need to coordinate our foreign policy approach. Guyana can have one approach and we run into Washington, and Jamaica is running with a slightly different approach. Our strength will lie in our examination of where we are, bring our best intellectuals to bear, our professors, etc., and craft a policy that is going to protect us first and foremost for the next 4 years, and allow us some level of economic development. And in Guyana's case, we have to make sure that those brothers and sisters that are weaker in the Caribbean, that we provide the financial and other support to them in return for what we consider important. So this requires, and this is where our weakness lies, you can only do that if you have a united domestic position in Guyana.
Amen. Amen.
You can't do it if this becomes a political issue and people realize that you're weak. There are a couple of immutable facts. We are in the sphere of American influence. That's a fact. Whether you like America, don't like America, that is a fact of life. Two, the high level of the significant level of Guyana's oil reserves, and the fact that America, one of America's primary companies, Exxon, is the one that's responsible for managing that, means that this Guyana has automatically become a critical asset, particularly because we're in their so-called backyard, and also because of the size of our economic importance for the most political product in the world, oil. we have to be able to find a strategy in which we can extract as much as we can for our own development and be sensitive to those facts. So we don't want to be able to, as a result of recklessness, oversight, negligence, place Guyana in a position where we are in the center of some global war between economic superpowers or actual superpowers. We don't want to be there. We can't get involved in that game.
You're already there.
Skills? I know we're there, but we don't have the skills. And that's why the foreign ministry in Guyana has to be the best of the best in the Caribbean. We have to hire the best that we can find, intellectuals, and they don't have to come from Guyana. We have to hire the best in the Caribbean.
Yes.
So that we have such a formidable force in our foreign ministry that we can anticipate 10, 15 years down the line how we navigate Guyana away from getting
Amen.
caught in the crosshairs.
Sir John Carter days. Sir John Carter et al. Those days, and Sir Sridhar
So
Ramphal those days.
this takes us nicely, and I'm hoping that you all would have noticed my T-shirt today.
Yes, Essequibo belongs.
Essequibo belongs to Guyana.
I
And I
noticed
actually have, this T-shirt has the complete proper map,
the problem.
the proper map of Guyana. But
Amen.
I think this takes us nicely to our discussion on our border and some of the challenges that we continue to have with Venezuela. And Dr. Shamir, you will know that we had a really very worrying and unfortunate incident just a couple days ago where 6 GDF officers, Army officers, were actually shot at on the border. So can you tell us from your diplomatic experience, you know, how unfortunate that is and what are the implications? Of course, some of the initial responses Venezuela has suggested that this was Guyana's fault. But tell me where we stand with this issue.
Honorable Cathy, before you go, Guyana is on the sticky wicket of a fight, a big fight, and that's to do with China. 47 and the Secretary of State, China is in the target with the sharpest arrow. I can't say anything more. Easy lesson, good for the dunce. So right away, there is a strike and not a good strike. I know a lot more. They've asked me for a confidential report. And when they ask you for stuff, you have to deliver it in 24 hours. I wanted to get the input from a reputable Guyanese because, you know, I'm not a sum total of knowledge, but I could not up to today get access to that person. I keep trying, so my report has gone in without the benefit in the condition. So Guyana is in the crosshairs of Washington because of a China connection. That's another reason why the American ambassador, I'm sure she's aware of, has been engineering for more American involvement. But Washington is very, very upset, and that's a very, very deep strike. On Venezuela, this is Shamir in Kazakhstan with His Excellency Maduro.
How long ago was that?
This was October 2017. Organization of Islamic Countries for Science and Technology Summit. How did it happen? He came to me. Why is the Arabs kissing you and loving you like that? Who are you? You look like you come from the West Indies. I says, well, I can't tell you about the Arabs. You have to go and ask them. I'm from Guyana. He says, oh, Guyana, my neighbor. I said, yes, you're giving your neighbor a hard time. We're border, we're neighbors. We don't have one year 15, and all of Guyana died. And he listened to my story, and I played, and know what he said? It is your Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Your government is a trouble. We want joint development. We want to. But all this hell and you going, it's not going to work. I will not give up. I said, but you've got to follow the laws. He said, laws are there. I have the might. I have the power. I have the oil. I will never give up. What else can I tell you? This is, you know, and I've written in my report in a guarded way, but a Ministry of Foreign Affairs in my 50-page month report, didn't care diddly squat. They
Yeah.
didn't see, they could not see beyond. So that is overall. And His Excellency is in my WhatsApp, separate relationships. The ambassadors of Venezuela are in my WhatsApp, separate relationships. So what I know, I listen to them. I try to put in a word, but they're there. I tried to get our ambassador Van West Charles to find out if he's slipping in a wheel or just drinking coconut water, why he's not doing his work and doing something to do other than the minister coming and call a meeting. That's too late when you call the foreign affairs, the Venezuelan ambassador to give him a lecture. You have to do your back channel work on site in Venezuela, in and around, even at the president's office. Meet some of his secretaries, tell your story, carry a bottle of goodies and have a meeting. Says, I come, this a little something. Can I explain Guyana's story? You have to be creative, think out of the box. This is what I did in the Kuwait and for Ghana to be where it is. You can't go sit down and wait for the note verbal. It's not going to work. That dog is not going to hunt. With all due respect, the minister we have of foreign affairs sitting up and calling and giving a note verbal, they'll go in his way. It went in the waste paper basket at the same time.
Wow.
It didn't go anywhere.
Nigel, you want to share some comments on this situation, this recent situation? Maybe some recommendations on things that the government should be doing?
Okay, so thanks, Kathy. First of all, and I know for a lot of Berbecians, I just want to say that they are concerned about what's happening at the border. This may not be specific to Berbice, because Berbice is not under threat, but of course Guyana is under threat. So first of all, Guyana should, and the Army in particular, have a range of options of scenarios that are likely to happen, and therefore the Army must have a range of reactions and responses that they have. In coordination with that, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the global, I don't want to say propaganda, the Global Communication Center coming out of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs should have specific scenarios. So one of the obvious scenarios that I'm sure the Ghana Defense Force has is what happens if the attack doesn't come from the Venezuelan army, but it comes from the sindicatos or some criminal element who trigger or provoke a reaction.
Yep.
How are you going to deal with it? So, for example, I would imagine that they must have figured that at some stage there is the real possibility the criminal element will make an incursion or attack the soldiers. We should not be caught flat-footed like we appear to have been done. We should have, okay, if one of our guys get hit and they get hit at Itorengbang, we have backup that will move, we will do X, Y, and Z, and at the same time, immediately with that, we will issue the following press releases because the world is instant.
Yes.
So that we immediately, as we get the information in Georgetown at X, Y, and Z, the hot response unit in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs should be touching all the major capitals of people friendly to us, reporting on that incident before Venezuela could breathe, so that we set the scene for anything that comes after that, because you've set the ground, you send the pictures, you set the information. I would assume again, if we are the Army, that amongst the scenarios, when you model out the scenarios, you say, well, look, if you get attacked, what do? One of the things you can do is that you can buy the satellite time that will tell you exactly what happened.
Yes.
You don't have to go to the U.S. Defense Department. You just buy the satellite time. You call up whoever it is, GenSat, this sat, or whatever sat, and say, we want the footage for the last 6 hours on the border, and you will get it instantly.
Yes.
So you can get that within 15 minutes of an attack, because all of that should be put in place. And therefore, you can see from what happened that these guys come from an army base, how they operated, where did they go to. And God forbid, if this was indeed a provocative act, what happens if another set of sindicatos somewhere else on that Cuyuni River launched an attack on a village? Would you believe this? We didn't even have the capacity to move the wounded off the battlefield. The wounded didn't even end up in a local medical hospital in one of the villages. They went to one of the communities, Mapata, and it's the villages that had to look after them, because we didn't even have the capacity to fly into
Yeah.
that area. Now, if we are that backward, and then the following day, the head of state says, we can have an investigation and then react. What that says to me is that you are completely, or we, sorry, because it's not a political issue, we are completely ill prepared and unprepared for anything looking like a moderately sophisticated act of provocation. We don't even have the ability to respond rapidly. And in this world, you cannot wait 24 hours. You cannot wait. From this, if you think of Hamas attacking at 3:30 in the afternoon to the Israeli response that came, I can't remember, 45 minutes, we should have all these
Yeah.
scenarios mapped out.
Yes.
And so for the head of the army to say, oh, we are going to bolster, that is cold comfort. Because if they were serious, people would have been at Mabaruma. And the other thing that bothers us, that we continue to see in our approach to these matters, is that there are a lot of able-bodied young men of military age coming into this country ostensibly as economic refugees. Now, just think about that.
Yeah.
You know how easy it is to access weapons in Guyana. So if you let 800, don't even let's go to 1,000, 800 able-bodied military-trained men come in as economic refugees, and you strategically put them in different places. So you create a distraction at the border like we had. And then they create a distraction in Mabaruma. We send all our resources out to wherever it is. And then they create a distraction in Grove, where they're living on the bank of the river. Or they create a distraction somewhere else.
Yep.
Total chaos, Guyana will go into panic.
Yep.
It will go into panic. And that panic includes the military. So we don't seem to understand the level of sophistication of our adversaries.
Yes.
This is not a criticism of the government. This is a comment on how fragile our existence is. And the only way to deal with that is to have a national plan in relation to the protection of your borders. And you need to have a military that is agile, that anticipates any potential scenario, and coupled with that, a foreign affairs that is so in tune that it alerts every one of our key allies that, look, potentially we have a story. So if they got shot at 3 o'clock, by 10 o'clock that evening, Security Council should have been notified. Venezuela should be saying, hey, guys, we gotta, sorry, we gotta back up. And that's exactly what happened when Burnham was in office.
Yes.
Venezuela actually said, hey, you guys are too aggressive. Nobody wants to talk to us from the third world. We're supposed to be in the non-aligned movement. And that's where you need to have them.
Yep.
Because we don't have the military capacity, but we have the ability to respond at least and delay any sort of, that gives us time to act on the diplomatic front, and hopefully as a result of the commitment of our friends, to have some level of reaction.
I want to say that, part of the challenge in this situation, and thankfully we've stated it over and over, the political opposition, this is APNU, AFC, the PNC, we all stand united on the importance of protecting our landscape, what is Guyana, and we are united on the approach for with regard to the border and the Venezuela situation. In fact, it was Dr. Shamir will remember, it was under our administration that we decided that, since for years this good officer process that never went anywhere, we went to the International Court of Justice to get settlement. And we are awaiting the results. But what is disturbing is that even at the parliamentary level, there's a parliamentary committee on foreign relations. And that committee has not met for the longest while. The government has a bilateral commission also, where they have heads of agencies. We've not seen any reports of that meeting recently. And so one of the things I would really like to call on and call for is that those agencies that bring together the expertise of all Guyanese. You know, Guyanese experts, regardless of their political affiliation, those groups must be doing their work. And of course, the people of Guyana need to be informed.
Yes.
You know, I express our concern to the Guyanese living on that border area because we don't see in the public any information to reassure us. The army or the government hasn't reported to the people of Guyana that this is what is going to happen, this is what they're going to put in place. And as a people, we know that our people will worry and will need, you know, to know that there's support and there's a plan in place. We don't have too much time left, but Doc, I don't know if you would like to, you know, say some words of encouragement, not only to those on our border, but also let us realize the challenges many Guyanese in places like Richmond Hill and Brooklyn are facing right now. We've seen stories on social media about them, you know, in that area, it being very quiet, the roads being desolate, people being concerned about ICE and their activities. So, Doc, could you speak to, you know, the challenges Guyanese in Guyana and on the border
Yeah.
might be feeling right now?
Yes, there are challenges, and I'm daily hearing it from New York and Richmond Hill. But above all, I think partly has to do with our government. Our government seems, and I'm getting the background report, to be laid back, laissez faire, and they seem to depend that the Southern Command will come to their assistance. Well, let me tell you, that dog is not going to hunt. Southern Command is not going to come to Guyana assistance. You got to be able, you have the skills, you have the technologies, you have the people on both sides of the aisle who are skilled. Here to call a name, Raphael Trotman is an expert in security. He's doing a PhD, will be a hit on a book in Europe. He has skills. Have they ever called him in for one word? No. So you need to know, use the skills you have. There are skills available. I'm getting inputs. We're not. In the case of the people in Richmond Hill, yes. The Guyanese have come on visitors' visas. They've overstayed. They've gotten jobs. They're sending money back home. And they're not doing the right stuff. Some of them have not paid their landlords. Now, the landlord is threatening them. If you don't pay me, I will open the door and ICE. So there's a lot of tension for the persons, either the legal ones or the illegal, because if ICE stops you, you have to show evidence. If you don't show evidence, you are in very, very sticky wicket. What we need to do is the Consul General, I know Ambassador Brotherson is trying, he's right now doing a lot with the celebration, but his team need to be every week in the area, not sitting up at the Consul General office in New York. He must have a team to go and meet with the people because the embassy has rank. It has diplomatic rank and protocol. I don't have to teach them this. Their presence, they can talk to the people and they can be a step between the ICE. But if they sit in the Ivory Castle in Manhattan and you're in New York and you come whenever you feel like going, that's not going to help. So the embassy has to have a more stronger outreach where all the Guyanese are to let them feel at ease. There are some Guyanese leaders among who have been, whatever they're trying to find a good word, have been wicked themselves and generating a lot of fees illegally and doing false reports and false presentation and drawing a lot of fees, fooling the people. That has also added to the mess. And some of them are state representatives. Oh, yes. They hold strong political office, and that has not helped. And now the trouble is on the Guyanese back. They can't be found. They've changed their phone number, and the office is closed, and nobody is there. Those are some that we ourselves are doing to our own people for the sake of the American dollar. But there's hope. Those Guyanese who are not in the right condition, I encourage you. There's a website. Go talk to your mandir and your church or your leaders, their forms, you can. If anybody reach out to me for help, I can help them. I'm a former agent in New York, so I know some of the tricks of the trade. But in New York, you have the man there, the masjid. You go and talk with them. You can file your papers. Even if you are in bad stead, find a requirement, do it. It may be a fine, but don't just throw your head up and say, you wait till they come. No, you have to be active. You have done something not right. You know it's not right. Try to correct it. Do the right collection. Find the forms. Have a piece of paper. Even when the ICE comes, say, look, I apply and I'm waiting. Do you know the ICE will stop?
Wow.
If that happens with an ICE, he said, look, sir, look, I apply and the system has not. You said, all right, I'm going to check back in you 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
You see that? But you can't sit back and wait because, the system is an organization. They have rules and regulation that they're following laws to. So we just got to be able to, Guyanese, you have to be able to protect yourself, reach out to those who you can. And there are many in New York and Richmond area, the solid ones and the religious sites, and you can be better tomorrow.
That's
But
great.
you have to help yourself.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Don't blame all the organization. Yes, there's a reason for the madness. America can't have 10,000 people every day coming to the border. Do you know that number has dropped to 229?
Yes, I saw that in the news.
I get all the reports. So because you can't sustain legal immigration, yes. You come with skills, yes. You come with vocation, yes. You want to extend, file the papers. They will catch you.
Great, Doc.
The system is there.
Great advice. Thank you. Okay, Nigel, you literally have 30 seconds for some of your closing thoughts.
I only want to take the opportunity to say again to all of our political partners and adversaries that the border is a national issue that requires all of our contributions, and that we should, despite our most the highest levels of suspicion that exist between our parties, the continued absence of trust, we should ensure that we have the best and the brightest working to protect the sovereign integrity of the country. And that means across political divides.
Amen.
So convene the subcommittee in Parliament, the ministerial committee, and let's start working on this.
And involve all the trade unions, the Chamber of Commerce, civil society, broad base. This is broad base. It's total mobilization. No more segmentation. That dog is not going to hunt. Guyana has all, and they expect you to operate as if you're a rich person, not to Kairudas.
Yeah. Yep. So
I haven't heard that word in a long time. It just flowed.
yeah. So, gentlemen, this has been a wonderful program. Very different. I think our viewers are going to reflect on the bulk of the variety of information, the depth of the information they received today on issues that have to do with diplomacy, our border, some of the challenges we face, preparations for being more independent in light of the new U.S. administration and some of their policies and the effects on Guyana. So, gentlemen, thank you very much. As we close off this program, I do want to wish everybody a happy Republic Day tomorrow.
Amen.
And, of course, a safe and happy Mashramani. I know that's the time when we go out and we have a carnival and we celebrate. I want to remind people about safety, especially on our roads. And having said that, I want to thank my presenters, Nigel Hughes and Dr. Shamir Ali. And I also want to thank DTV for managing us so well tonight.
Sarah.
So, yes. So take care, everybody. Happy Republic. Happy Mashramani. And we look forward to you joining our program next week. Same time. Thank you.
Thank you. And blessed Ramadan next Friday, first day of Ramadan. Goodbye,
Amen.
all.
Yes.
Goodbye, all.
Good night.
Good night.